In the previous video, we have seen how to create classes, and we also got familiar with the concept of a class and also the fundamentals of object-oriented programming. Let's create another class in here. I'm going to simulate a dog. So I'm going to call my class dog. My dog would have a name, also maybe a color. I'm going to save the number of legs that the dog has. For example, let's say legs, and also a boolean that if my dog has a tail or not. I can create a constructor for my class by pressing Alt Insert and select all of those fields, and also maybe getters and setters. But before that, let's change the access state of all of these to private. Once again, by pressing Alt Insert, you can generate your getters and setters. Beside these fields, we have seen that our objects can have behaviors as well. For example, I'm going to define a behavior for my dog that indicates the dog's eating. So public void eat. Let's pass a food in here. We are just going to print eating that food. We also have seen how we can initialize and define our objects in our main class. We could do so by typing the name of our class. For example, dog is equal to new dog. In the constructor, I need to pass a name. Let's say Roland. Also, it has a color, which I'm going to say brown. The number of legs, which is 4 for a dog. And also, it has a tail. I can have access to all the fields and public methods of my object. We have seen all of those processes in the previous video. Let's create another object indicating a bird. I will talk about it, and we will see why I am creating this object. Once again, my bird would have a name, private string name. It also has a color. It has some legs, and another boolean indicating if our bird has a tail or not. A quick constructor, and getters and setters. And a behavior for eating. Public void eat a food maybe, and just printing the name of that food. We can initialize this item in our main activity the same way that we have defined a dog. But as you can see, there are a lot of steps. There are a lot of similarity between a bird and a dog. Instead of defining all these fields and constructors and methods, I can create another object called animal, and later on inherit these two animals, for example in here dog and bird, from that parent class. Let's see how we can do that. Let's call our parent class animal. Maybe copy some of these from here. Constructor and getters and setters. Also, let's copy that eat method. Now that we have defined our base animal class, I can delete all of these for my dog and instead inherit that animal class. Let's delete all of these, and in here at the class declaration, after the name of our class, we can say extend the parent class, which is animal. By extending dog from animal class, we are saying that this dog will have all the features that are inside the animal class, and we can also customize our dog. But it's giving me a red warning, and that's because we need a constructor. By pressing Alt Insert, once again, clicking on constructor. This constructor has some sort of a strange syntax. You can see that even though we haven't defined any fields for this class, we are receiving some data. We also haven't seen this super keyword as well. Basically, it means that do whatever is happening inside the parent class with these values. For example, in our animal class inside the constructor, we are setting the value of all these fields to the values that we are receiving from our constructor. This is what we call inheritance in Java. If you take a look at your main class, we are not getting any red errors. And that's because we are extending dog from animal. And the same way that we have access to the dog's name by defining all of those fields inside our class, we can have access, for example, to the dog's name by saying dog.getName. As simple as that. Let's run our application and see if it's working. You can see the name of our dog. You can also have the behaviors of the parent class as well. But for that, outside of this constructor, once again, let's use the generate from here. You need to go to this override methods. We will talk about what that is, but as you can see, there is one method, eat, in here, which we have created in our parent class. Let's click on OK and see what's going to happen. By overriding a method, you are saying that this child class has the behaviors of your parent class, but you can customize this method as well. Once again, we are seeing this super keyword. It has the same meaning as it had up in here inside the constructor. Do whatever you are doing with this food that is happening in the parent class. If I want to customize this, I can delete this super.eat and instead print something else. This time, instead of eating, I'm going to say chewing food. Let's call this method from our main class and see if it's working. I can say dog.eat. Let's pass meat as the food. Let's run our application. You can see that it's chewing meat. But if I don't delete the super class, if I run my program, it should be eating meat. Now, if I want to create a bird object, I can extend that from the animal class as well. Let's delete all of these and let's extend from animal class. Once again, I need to create a constructor, and also if I need the eating or the behavior of the parent class, I can override that. You can use this generate and override, or you can press Ctrl O. You have the same dialog. Let's override the eat method. You can see that there is much less code and you are saving a lot of time. You don't need to define all those boring and similar codes in both bird and dog class. And also you can customize your classes as well. For example, a bird can fly, but a dog cannot. I can create another behavior for my bird. Let's say public void fly. Let's just print flying. If I go to my main class and create a bird object, let's call it bird is equal to new bird. Its name is going to be Nina. For the color, let's say white. For the legs, let's say 2, and has tail. Yes, it has tail. Now I can simulate the birds flying by saying bird.fly. But I guess it was in capital case. Let's try running our application. You can see that the bird is flying. Let's add the name of the bird to the flying method as well. You can see that even though I don't have any getters method, I can use something like this dot get name as well, because we are inheriting from the animal class. If I run my application, you can see that Nina is flying. Like different behaviors, our object can have different fields as well. For example, a bird can have furs as well. Let's define another field in here, a boolean has fur. And once again, let's delete this constructor and generate it once again. This time you can see that the constructor has been changed. And let's minimize all these panes so that we could see better. You can see that this hasFir has been added up in here, and also we are setting the value of our fields to the value that has been passed to the constructor. If we switch back to our main, we should see some warning. I need to pass hasFir as the value as well. This way of creating a parent class like this animal and later on extend different objects from that parent class and setting and customizing different behaviors and features is called inheritance in Java. You can inherit another class from this dog class. Let's create another object. Let's name this one shepherd. Our shepherd this time can extend from dog class. Let's create the constructor. You can see that the constructor of this class is receiving the values of the parent class. You can do this extending as many times as you want. You can use it, for example, if you want to categorize the dogs by their race or maybe their name or something. This was called inheritance. There is another concept in Java called composition. Let's talk about that as well. Before that, let's delete all of these. Composition means that you are composing different objects together in one object. For example, if you have a car, your car might have an engine, which that engine has some features. Also, it might have a fuel tank or maybe some number of doors. You can compose all of those together inside the car class. Let's create all of those mentioned. The first one is the engine. Let's define some features, for example, the model of our engine and also RPM, round per minute. Let's make the first one private as well. I'm going to keep it simple, so I think these two would be enough. Constructor and getters and setters. Now I can create my car class like this. Let's say car, a name maybe, private string name, the number of doors, for example, and also we can say private engine, the object that we just created. Make sure to select the right package. Let's call it engine. We can create our constructor and getters and setters. This is called composition, composing two objects or maybe more together. I could have created some other objects, for example, a stereo system or maybe the fuel system for my car, and then later on compose all of these inside this car class, but I'm trying to keep it simple. Now in my main class, if I try to create a car object, let's say car is equal to new car. Inside the constructor, I need a name, for example, let's say Mercedes, and the number of doors, which would be 4, and also another object of type engine. I can create my engine object above in here. Engine is equal to new engine. For engines constructor, I need a model and an RPM. For example, for the model, I can say a Renault engine. We know that Mercedes won't use a Renault engine, but it's hypothetical. For the RPM, let's say 6000. And later on, in here, I can pass the engine. Or instead of passing the engine in here, I can say new engine inside the constructor of this car. And after that, pass the model and the RPM of that engine. Renault and 6000. You can use both of those ways. I can have access to the car's name similar to any other object. For example, let's print its name. But what if we want to have access, for example, to the model of this engine? We could say something like this. For example, let's say engine model. I can say car dot get engine dot another one get model. This way we are accessing the model of our engine of our car. Let's run our application and see if we are doing fine. You can see that the model of our engine has been printed. This is called composition in Java language. Also, I'm not sure that if I mentioned in the previous video or not, if we have multiple constructors for our object, for example, if I create another constructor for the car which only receives the name and the engine and not the doors, if you have multiple constructors, this is called polymorphism. It means that we can create our objects with different constructors. Polymorphism means different shapes. Okay, I think that's enough for this video. In the next video, we will have a quick challenge so that we make sure that we are at the same page. See you in the next video.